A man responsible for a 1982 home bombing evaded justice, but after 4 decades, he faces the police in a standoff. Stephen Craig Campbell has been a fugitive for 42 years. He has been wanted on attempted first-degree slaying charges after he planted an explosive device in a toolbox outside the Wyoming home of his estranged wife's boyfriend in 1982. The investigators said that Campbell's ex-wife was the intended target of the explosion. The bomb exploded when she opened the toolbox. One of her fingers was torn off and shrapnel was sent flying. The explosion also caused a fire that burned the residence and a neighboring unit. Campbell was arrested and charged with attempted first-degree slaying in the case, but he vanished after being released on bond. He was placed on the U.S. Marshal's most wanted list and had been on the run up until his arrest on February 19, 2025. An investigation found that around 1984, Campbell assumed the identity of Walter Lee Kaufman, who was 22 when he passed away in 1975. Campbell and Walter both attended the University of Arkansas to pursue engineering. The authorities believe that there was most likely a connection between the two because they attended the same school. Over the years, Campbell used the deceased man's name to get a passport, obtain a replacement Social Security card, and purchase property in Weed, New Mexico. The investigators estimated that Campbell was able to fraudulently collect around $140,000 in Social Security benefits. His ruse began to fall apart in September 2019 when he renewed his driver's license in Cloudcroft, New Mexico. The attorney's office said, after a renewed New Mexico license was issued to Campbell under Kaufman's name, agents from the National Passport Center's Fraud Prevention Unit discovered Kaufman's demise and the suspected decades-long fraudulent use of his identity. The authorities obtained an arrest warrant for Campbell in February 2025 and tracked him down to his 44-acre property in New Mexico. On February 19th, FBI, U.S. Marshals, Social Security Administration investigators, and the Otero County Sheriff's Office moved in to arrest him. 76-year-old Campbell allegedly greeted law enforcement armed with a scoped rifle, positioning himself in an elevated, partially concealed spot on his property. After repeated orders and the deployment of flashbangs, Campbell emerged from the woodline and was detained. His rifle was allegedly loaded with high-powered ammunition capable of piercing standard body armor. A search of the property uncovered 57 firearms with a large amount of ammunition. For officials with the Sweetwater County Sheriff's Office, the significance of the arrest cannot be overstated. Jason Mower, the spokesperson for the Sheriff's Office, said, "Campbell's wanted poster has been on the wall at our office since I started here nearly 20 years ago. I have worked hundreds of fugitive cases, helping track down and capture fugitives all across the country. But never Campbell. Every lead went cold, no matter what tools we used. Now I finally understand why." Campbell was charged with misuse of a passport, and the investigators are evaluating additional charges. If convicted of misuse of a passport, Campbell faces up to 10 years in prison. A trial date has not yet been set. The authorities in Wyoming have been notified of Campbell's capture and requested that a detainer be placed on him in connection with the pending attempted first-degree slaying charges for the bomb. The serial perpetrator responsible for at least 3 of the Colonial Parkway cases in Virginia has been tied to a 4th victim thanks to DNA testing. Her family had to wait almost 4 decades for answers. 18-year-old Laurie Ann Powell was last seen alive on March 8, 1988. She got into an argument with her boyfriend, which caused her to exit his car. She was last seen by him at approximately 11:30 p.m., walking along Route 614 toward Route 17 in the White Marsh area of Gloucester County, Virginia. Laurie was a 1987 graduate of Gloucester High School. She had worked at a video store her mom ran at Edge Hill Shopping Center in Gloucester Courthouse. At the time, the sheriff's office described her disappearance as strange and not exhibiting the classic signs of a runaway. Extensive search efforts followed, involving the local sheriff's office, state police helicopter, track dogs, friends, and family. Flyers were distributed throughout Gloucester and the surrounding communities. and a $1,000 reward was offered for any information leading to a possible arrest. About a month later, on April 2nd, Laurie's nude body was found in the Elizabeth River near Craney Island, which is just off of Norfolk. The autopsy showed that she had multiple stab wounds, including a fatal stab wound to the back of her neck. She had also been indecently assaulted. While the investigators collected DNA from the crime scene, the detectives were unable to identify a positive match for 3 decades. That was until 2017, when 63-year-old Alan Wilmer passed away at his Lancaster home. Wilmer, who was known by the nickname Pokey, was a fisherman and used a commercial fishing boat to travel along the Elizabeth River. While identifying his remains, the detectives discovered his DNA matched 3 cases attributed to the Colonial Parkway crime. His known victims include 29-year-old Teresa Lynn Howell, 20-year-old David Knobling, and 14-year-old Robin Edwards. David and Robin were found fatally shot, with Robin also having been indecently assaulted in 1987. Teresa was strangled and found indecently assaulted near a construction zone in 1989. The investigators found Wilmer's DNA at both crime scenes, but the investigators believed that there could be more victims. This includes the disappearance of Cassandra Haley and Keith Call in 1988, as the two disappeared just 8 days before Laurie's body was discovered. Their bodies have still never been found. The investigators believe that Wilmer initially targeted his victims by searching the isolated 22-mile stretch of Colonial Parkway in his blue 1966 Dodge Fargo pickup truck. They then believe Wilmer used his custom-built boat, the Denny Wade, to transport his victims to various crime scenes along the riverbanks. Laurie's body was located on Craney Island, just 10 miles away from that of Robin and David's bodies on Ragged Island Wildlife Management and Refuge area. The investigators found Teresa's body close to 9 miles away from Laurie's. While Wilmer is suspected in several cold cases, his DNA has never been uploaded to the U.S. National Database, CODIS. When asked why, officials said, "It is prohibited from being entered into CODIS because you have to be convicted or arrested of certain felony offenses," and Wilmer was not. In mid-November 2025, the officials officially announced that Wilmer was identified via DNA as the person responsible for Laurie's demise. Laurie's sister, Cindy Kirchner, spoke at the news conference about the 18-year-old's short life, saying, "She did not wait for life to happen. She made it happen. She was bold, brave, spontaneous, full of life, witty, smart, and beautifully herself. A true firecracker. She spoke her mind, followed her heart, and never apologized for being herself." She continued, "After 37 years of heartbreak and unanswered questions, our family has finally received the long-awaited news that the case of our beloved daughter, sister, Laurie Ann, has been solved. While nothing can erase the pain of losing Laurie Ann, today we find comfort knowing that the truth has come to light." Law enforcement emphasized the collaboration and DNA technology advances that made this resolution possible. At the same time, they asked the public for any additional information about Wilmer, especially from people who may have worked with him, boaters, co-workers, or acquaintances, to help identify if there are more victims. The 34-year-old cold case of a woman that was found in rural Johnson County, Texas, has finally been cracked. 25-year-old Cynthia Gonzalez, who worked as an adult entertainer, was last seen leaving her home on September 17, 1991, to meet a client. Her ex-husband reported her missing, and her car was found abandoned hours later, prompting the officers to investigate whether she had been kidnapped. A few days later, on September 22nd, her body was found on private property in a rural part of Johnson County. She had been shot multiple times, and her body has started decomposing. Despite several leads, no arrests were made and the case went cold. That is, until local college students stepped in 34 years later. The University of Texas at Arlington's Criminology and Criminal Justice Department began a partnership with Arlington Police at the start of the fall semester in 2025. Selected students were given real cold case files to investigate. All the students spent class time and often hours before and after, reviewing their assigned case file in groups, which included witness statements, evidence and crime scene photos, and police and detective reports. They worked closely with Arlington Police Department detectives in hopes of finding new leads to bring closure to families long seeking answers. The police department stressed that it does not have a full-time cold case unit and that the detectives can work on unsolved cases only between active, current investigations. After having reviewed up to 500 files, the students noticed that Cynthia and Janie Perkins were friends and that the detectives knew in the 1990s that the pair shared a romantic partner. Several weeks before the crime, the unidentified partner told Janie that they were ending their relationship to be with Cynthia. Janie had no alibi for the night Cynthia went missing and failed 2 voluntary polygraph tests when she was asked whether she knew who was responsible for the disappearance and shooting of Cynthia. She even told detectives that she was glad Cynthia was deceased and had thought about either ending her life or having someone else do it. Despite all that, she was never charged at the time. A detective reviewed the case in 2024, but the investigators did not believe there was any new evidence or leads to pursue, and instead agreed to keep the case open. Following the students' prompting, however, the detectives returned to the investigation files. They discovered that witnesses said that Janie Perkins had admitted that she was involved in the crime and had mentioned specific details. The police said, detectives compared those witness statements to the evidence in the case and found they aligned. They believe this demonstrated Ms. Perkins either participated in or facilitated Ms. Gonzalez's kidnapping and slaying. 63-year-old Perkins was arrested by U.S. Marshals on November 6, 2025, on account of capital slaying. Cynthia's daughter, Jessica Roberts, who was just 6 years old when her mother was slain, said she was shocked by the development. She said, "I am so grateful for this program and so proud of these students at UTA and so thankful for the time they have spent and the effort they have put into this case." Police Chief Al Jones said, "When we launched our cold case partnership with UTA, we always hoped we would get an outcome like this one day. I do not think any of us expected that lightning would strike the first time. I want to sincerely thank the students for their work and dedication to this case." The same class of students is reviewing 2 other cold cases. There was finally a breakthrough in one of Prince George's County, in Maryland's, oldest mysteries. On January 13, 1998, Cheryl Crandell was discovered unresponsive inside of her office at Prince George's Hospital Center in Cheverly. An autopsy later showed that she passed away from strangulation and she had been indecently assaulted. Sherry, who was 50 at the time, had been employed at the hospital as a patient coordinator. Although DNA was recovered from the scene, the investigators could not identify a suspect. In the days after the crime, the police conducted a DNA dragnet and asked workers at the hospital to voluntarily give up their DNA. It was a decision made after the police learned that Sherry sent an email to hospital officials days before the attack, complaining of recent thefts and feared for her safety. But the DNA never led anywhere until a team of experts in genealogy got to work. On the night Sherry was found, a young detective took charge of the scene and never gave up. For 27 years, Bernie Nelson, now retired, interviewed witnesses, tracked down leads, and for the last 5 years, used genealogy to find the man responsible for Sherry's end. Cold case detectives from the Prince George's County Police Department reopened their probe about 27 years after Sherry's demise, when advancements in technology and investigative techniques allowed them to revisit the evidence more thoroughly. Using investigative genetic genealogy, the police partnered with the Forensic Lab, Othram, and the FBI to produce new leads in Sherry's case. Forensic tests brought potential familial links to the suspect to the fore and, in the end, confirmed what the laboratory described as a key genetic relationship that guided the detectives to their conclusion. In November 2025, the police identified the suspect as Bari Shabazz, formerly known as Edward Barry Watts, who lived less than a mile away from Prince George's Hospital Center when the crime took place. He was 48 when the police said that he indecently assaulted and strangled Sherry. A witness to the crime, a member of the hospital cleaning crew, told the detectives the perpetrator was wearing a white doctor's coat and had a stethoscope around his neck. Shabazz passed away in 2019 at the age of 69. The authorities said they were not able to pinpoint a potential motive for the fatal attack, but Shabazz may have intended to steal from the hospital the night that it happened. Nelson said, "He is the type of person, based on his background, that would have just gone over to the hospital to steal. That was the way he operated." The detective said that Shabazz had a long criminal history, including a conviction for the attempted indecent assault of a pregnant woman in 1972. Sherry's son, Darren Crandell, was in college when his mother was slain. He rushed to the hospital when he received the news of her attack. Darren said, "Today offers some closure for our family, friends, and most importantly, our mother. Our family knows Bernie never gave up on solving this case or forgot about our mother during these 27 years. To Bernie and to everyone involved in this investigation, thank you. Our family is forever grateful." The Anoka County Sheriff's Office can finally close the book on a 42-year-old cold case of Minnesota. On January 21, 1983, a newborn baby girl was found on the side of the road on Main Street, between Highway 65 and Radisson Road in the city of Blaine, Minnesota. A motorist spotted the baby and left the area to call 911. Upon arrival, the authorities declared the infant deceased. The Blaine Police Department and Anoka County Sheriff's Office immediately began their investigation into the baby's demise. An autopsy was performed, and the medical examiner was unable to confirm whether the full-term baby, whose placenta was still attached, had been born alive. The infant was buried at a local church cemetery in a community funeral, becoming known as Rachel Marie Doe. Despite an intensive investigation, multiple leads, and multiple interviews, the parents could not be identified, and the case went cold. Details of the case were entered into the National Missing and Unidentified Persons System. In 2024, after more than 4 decades went by, the Anoka County Sheriff's Office's Cold Case Unit submitted forensic evidence to Othram, where the scientists determined that advanced DNA testing could help to identify the infant. Samples of the baby's umbilical cord were sent to Othram, where forensic and genetic genealogy determined 2 paternal matches. Othram's in-house forensic genetic genealogy team used the profile in a genetic genealogy search to develop new investigative leads, which included potential relatives of the parents. These leads were returned to law enforcement for a follow-up investigation. This renewed investigation led officials to the likely parents. The sheriff's office spoke with the suspected mother in July of 2025, who reportedly told the sheriff's office that she was Rachel's mother. According to the woman, she was a teenager in 1983 and had given birth at home alone to the infant, who was unresponsive at birth. Believing her baby was stillborn, the woman said she panicked and left her on the side of the road in the hopes someone would find her. The woman told the detectives that she had not spoken about the incident to anyone until the sheriff's office reached out and said no one knew she had been pregnant or had given birth. When following up with the father of Rachel, the man stated that he had no knowledge of the baby's existence until the detectives contacted him. After the Midwest Medical Examiner's Office re-examined the autopsy results from 1983, they too could not determine if Rachel had been stillborn at birth or had passed away after being born. The sheriff's office stated that it submitted its findings to the Anoka County Attorney's Office for possible charges. After reviewing the case, the attorney's office declined to pursue any charges, stating there was a lack of evidence that a crime took place and the statute of limitations had expired for disposing of human remains. Anoka County Attorney Brad Johnson said, "Top prosecutors in our office reviewed this case for potential charges. The evidence and the interests of justice do not support the filing of any criminal charges in this case, and we respect this family's privacy now that our work is done. We appreciate all the care and attention that the Anoka County Sheriff's Office have given to this case and to answer the questions that surrounded the discovery of this child. Because no criminal charges were filed, the Sheriff's Office did not identify those involved in the incident." The Sheriff's Office wrote in a press release, While there are instances where criminal charges are appropriate and necessary to hold individuals accountable, there are times when the situation does not allow for them. Nevertheless, it is important for our community to receive the answers they have been waiting for once they are publicly available. With Rachel's parents identified and no criminal charges placed, the sheriff's office said it was marking the case as solved. A breakthrough in a 1968 case has been made possible through the dedication of the people working the case and advancements in forensic genealogy. On April 28, 1968, deputies responded to a report from two individuals who discovered the body of a woman in a field near Lake Wheeler Road and 1010 Road in southern Wake County, North Carolina. Witnesses reported seeing a fire in the field on the night before the discovery of the body. The victim had been burned badly, so that she could not be identified. She was determined to be a white female and approximately 35 years old. The Wake County Sheriff's Office, with assistance from the North Carolina State Bureau of Investigation, conducted an extensive investigation. Despite those efforts in 1968 and the years that followed, the victim was never positively identified and no arrests were made. In 2004, 36 years later, information gathered by the investigators and the North Carolina State Bureau of Investigation pointed to a suspect, Robert Reagan, who lived in Raleigh. There was enough evidence to charge him with ending the life of the woman, but he passed away in 1992. Jewel Madsen, Reagan's daughter, said at the time, "I would like the public to know that there are two sides to this story. We have been shown no evidence, no proof. If he was alive today, he would have a trial. All the evidence would be put forward for us to make a rational decision." The sheriff's office did not close the case because the victim was still unidentified. For the next 2 decades, the investigators concentrated their efforts on identifying the victim, pursuing every tip, and conducting multiple rounds of DNA testing without success. In 2024, after 2 decades, the victim's hair was submitted to Astrea Forensics to do DNA analysis. The following year, in 2025, Astrea Forensics successfully developed a profile for the victim. The results were analyzed by a forensic genealogist with First Genes LLC, leading to the identification of potential relatives. In November 2025, the Wake County Sheriff's Office investigators met with those relatives, where additional DNA testing confirmed their relation to the victim and identified her as Myrtle Holcomb, born in 1919. At the time of her demise, Myrtle was a young woman who had recently traveled to Raleigh from Florida. She was married and had 2 children. Her family knew she was traveling to Raleigh, but did not know why. They were shocked to hear that her life was ended. They lost touch with her. They were not sure where she was at the time or what had gone on with her, but they knew at some time she'd passed since she was born in 1919. This long-awaited confirmation has finally restored her identity and provides long-sought answers to her family, who respectfully request privacy and ask not to be contacted. Sheriff Willie Rowe said, "The entire Wake County Sheriff's Office offers our sincere condolences to Myrtle's loved ones. Our hope is that this information provides the family with long-sought answers and reassurance that she has not been forgotten. Our office does not put unsolved cases on a shelf never to be touched again." Investigators work diligently with the hope of one day closing every single one, no matter how long it takes. The genealogist behind solving the case said using hair in these kinds of cases was a new advancement. Myrtle's hair was kept as evidence at the sheriff's office for 57 years. Leslie Kaufman of First Genes LLC said, "This is the second case that I have been able to solve with forensic genetic genealogy, and it is a wonderful feeling to be able to give someone an answer after all these years."